The Cincinnati Bearcats have a golden opportunity to go 3-0 in Big 12 play with UCF coming in this Saturday.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Bearcats podcast. This is a Locked On College Crossover, Locked On Bearcats and Locked On UCF. Alongside me here in just a moment will be Mike G from Locked On UCF, and we were going to break down exactly what you can expect from this UCF-UC game here on Saturday at Nippert Stadium. We're going to look at the strengths of both teams, look at an interesting matchup between a not-so-great pass defense in the Bearcats and a rotating cast of characters at the quarterback position for UCF, and we'll give you our predictions a little bit later on this Locked On College Crossover.
Cincinnati exceeding maybe some people's expectations for the season. They did not do a Big 12 preseason media poll, but we here at Locked On did, and Cincinnati got voted 14th, man. Right down there with UCF. So two teams with not a lot of expectations on them. Expectations rising, though, for Cincinnati. Talk to me about where the Bearcats are as a program right now before we get into the keys.
Yeah, it feels really good to be much higher than where they are in the preseason polls. Yeah, but to be honest with you, Mike, like at the beginning of this season, we had a lot of questions about Scott Satterfield. Who is he as a coach, and who is Brendan Sorsby as a quarterback? And at least for these first couple of games, we feel a lot better. And they were a couple of plays away against Nebraska from being undefeated. And that really would have put them in a much better spot than even they are right now. But this has been a surprising season in that the offense is so good, because this Bearcat offense was very inconsistent last year, but right now it looks like the reason to believe in them in every game moving forward. Now they don't play Texas Tech, but they do have some tough matchups the rest of the way, but I still feel really good about their chances in any game that they play because of how well the offense has scored.
Yeah, the Cincinnati Bearcats third in the conference in total offense right now, and yards per game as an offense. So a lot of things working there for the Bearcats here a few games into the season. A little middling in the passing game, but they're able to run. They can run the ball with the best of them here in the Big 12. Such a interesting program Cincinnati is, that finds themselves every once in a while on the cusp of the national conversation. And here you are with a 12-team playoff and an opportunity possibly for the Big 12 to get two teams into the playoff. Didn't happen last year, but those teams had their opportunities. Is this a team that you see that should be contending for one of those, what should be two Big 12 playoff spots?
I really want to say yes, but there's definitely some interesting points on the defense that make me say I'm not so sure as of yet. I saw on K Ford that I think that UC is in the group that needs to win at least 10 ball games this year. And that is going to be tough for them to get to that number. There's a lot of us that expected 6 or 7 before the season started, and we would have been thrilled with 8 or 9. And it feels like that seems about the right area to expect this team to get to. So I think they might be just outside the playoff conversation, but there's definitely a few things that if they continue to go as right as they've gone, there's no reason to believe that they won't at least push for that kind of a conversation right now. I stopped short of saying, yes, I expect them to be there.
Yeah, look, UC, the second worst pass defense in the Big 12 as of today right here, but the 5th best rush defense in the league. So the dichotomy between those two disciplines going to be interesting here to look at. But let's talk about keys to the game for these two teams. Scott Frost in his first year back at UCF, and it's been a mixed bag of results. But overall, I would say there's hope in Orlando that they are on the cusp of something. Now, until recruiting catches up, Jeff, you know, the talent gap between UC and UCF and what is considered to be the top of the Big 12 is a lot of the reason why these two teams got voted way down at the bottom. I'll pull it back up here. And for our listeners on pod, on our Locked On preseason poll, the Arizona State Sun Devils came in at number 1 in our preseason poll. Kansas State number 2. They are floundering right now. Texas Tech at 3. Baylor at 4, having an interesting season. Iowa State coming in at 5. BYU at 6. TCU at 7. Utah at 8, Kansas at 9. They just took out UCF this past weekend. The Colorado Buffs, Deion's Buffs at 10. Houston at 11. Oklahoma State at 12. They had a midseason firing there. West Virginia, they rehire or another retread with the old coach there at West Virginia, with Rich Rod returning to West Virginia. Cincinnati coming in at 14. UCF at 15, and Arizona, who got voted dead last but has already taken out the defending conference champions in Arizona State, coming in at 16. So expectation, nowhere to go but up,
right?
For these teams in terms of expectations on the season when you get voted that low. But for UCF, this team has gone as quarterback has gone, and what we saw on Saturday, starting quarterback Taven Jackson got hurt. There are some who felt like Cam Fancher acquitted himself fairly well under the circumstances. I would agree with that assessment, but it's been about having that trigger man that allows you to expand most of your offense. And I'm going to say health at quarterback definitely going to be a key to the game for UCF here this Saturday.
It's all going to be about the trenches on the Bearcat side, though. Like, I definitely want to get into why I am worried about the UCF quarterback here in our segment too, because of UC's past defense. But UC's offensive line is one of the best in the country, and I feel confident saying that. That's one of the reasons that I feel as though they can push for a bigger conversation to the 2025 season for them. It's because they have a lot of experience on the offensive line. They are led by Gavin Gerhardt, who is one of the best offensive linemen in the country. I expect him to be playing on Sundays next year. He's a redshirt senior. But they also have found money at the left tackle position in Joe Cotton. Joe Cotton has been amazing for them. And in the blind side, where last year it was very much a question mark, and one of the reasons that Brendan Sorsby was very inconsistent, this year it's been anything but. It's been a strength for this offensive line. And so that's why you see the rushing numbers, because there's definitely moments, especially last week against Iowa State in a depleted secondary. Iowa State was starting a wide receiver and 2 guys who had never played a snap at the college level last week in their defensive backfield. But they did not pass as much because they were running guys over, and the offensive line was pushing guys back to the point that, like, whether it was Tawee Walker or Evan Pryor, the 2 running backs for the Bearcats, those guys at some plays weren't getting touched until they were 5-6 yards down the field. It's because of the push that this offensive line gets, and that's where my confidence in this Bearcats team begins, is with the big guys up front.
Yeah, look, you mentioned up front in the trenches. I was going there as well, too, as kind of a secondary. We'll get to the third here in a second. Key to the game for UCF, it has been about that the atrociousness of the play along that offensive line. Quite frankly, Jeff, they've gotten 2 quarterbacks hurt multiple times so far this season. And
there's a pro team in Cincinnati that's pretty good at that, too.
Yeah, look, I'm going to be looking for some adjustments here from Scott Frost and how they call this offensively if your line cannot hold up in pass pro under the type of play calling that they are doing right now. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you've got a bunch of slow developing play action plays that require your line to block for more than 2.5 seconds, good luck behind this line. It has been an adventure. They've done well in some spots, but then the lapses, when the lapses have happened, they've been absolutely devastating for UCF. And you are just not deep enough to go up against a team that's playing like Cincinnati is and expect that you're going to be able to pass block the way they have been, the way they've been calling plays, and win this game. So I had this as a potential upset preseason for UCF. It feels weird saying upset when one team is voted 15 and the others voted 14, right? But still technically an upset. However, right now, I've got to give the edge to Cincinnati in the trenches. I just have not seen the consistency I would like to see from UCF right now down there. And while you may have some, you said they found money down there in some spots, UCF has not. As a matter of fact, it's been the exact opposite, dude. It's been the equivalent of overdraft fees.
Right.
For UCF down on the offensive line. What do these two teams need to avoid? What are the one thing that they need to avoid if they expect to escape with a win on Saturday? We'll talk about that next.
Mazda delivers confidence with every ride because Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. They've got more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. You can feel that Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention in how they craft every model. Plus, you can make every day drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. And they have all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV. You can drive with confidence through every situation. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. And mo money, mo problems, no money, no problems. Money just brings problems. But with Monarch Money, you can have less problems because you can monitor all of your accounts in one place. On one screen with one login, Monarch Money makes it easy for you to financially thrive beginning today. And there's this great introductory offer. If you go to monarchmoney.com and you put in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, you get half off of your first year. Seriously, everything all in one place. Your deposit accounts, your credit accounts, your investment accounts, and you can see how all of them move. You can track your spending, set spending limits, and monitor your finances with a partner very easily, all in one place. That's the key to everything. One place, one page, one login, all at monarchmoney.com. Again, the promo code is LOCKEDONCollege to get half off your first year at monarchmoney.com.
What do these teams need to avoid to get out with the win? The pitfalls. Now, I'd be accused of being cliche if I said, don't turn the ball over. However, you cannot turn the ball over. UCF has not done that at a high rate so far this year. I don't expect them to start versus Cincinnati. But you've got to maintain flow offensively to this football game if you're Scott Frost. Last week versus Kansas, a negative 1 yard third quarter was absolutely devastating in a game. They lost by 6 points. In the fourth quarter, they took that lack of momentum into a fourth quarter and had 3 shots to score a touchdown from about midfield and could not punch the ball in one time. 3 shots from midfield in the fourth quarter, Jeff, 0 points for UCF. They've got to do better maintaining the flow and keeping some sort of second half momentum going. We've seen it in spots that can be absolutely as explosive as any team in the Big 12 when they're hitting on all cylinders. But the ebbs and flows, the difference between the highs and the lows, man. Are you a Marvel fan? Do you watch Marvel at all?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
right, yeah. Like it's like Century or The Void. and we're really trying to avoid the void here offensively for UCF. So for Scott Frost, again, I think we're at a point in the season where we understand who these teams are from a personnel makeup. You know who your players are, and right. You may have some unsung heroes that are on the bench that haven't gotten time that could emerge, but as far as your starters are concerned, you are who you are, right? Like the identity of who you are is ingrained in you. And I don't expect to see anything different at this point in the season. What I expect to see is that the coaching staff evolves in how they understand what they have and how they use it, right? And can they use it better than they did on Saturday versus Kansas in that third quarter that produced negative 1 yards, man? It was absolutely brutal. But talk to me about Cincinnati, man. What's the thing that's been happening all year for the Bearcats that you don't want to see on Saturday? It will probably lose them the football game.
These last couple of weeks, it's been home run plays. Both Jalen Daniels and Rocco Becht were able to hit a couple of key home runs. And there were a few interesting calls in the Iowa State game, but I'm not going to hang anything on that. Like, I really think that there is a big chance that UCF makes a couple of big plays and keeps this game exactly where they want it for the fourth quarter, because the way that they play coverage is mostly this soft zone. And if whoever is under center for UCF is okay taking the short pass here, the short pass there, getting them to lean in a little bit more, and then all of a sudden throwing one over the top, this defensive backfield is kind of gettable. And that's the one thing that really gives me a lot of pause thinking about the future of this team, because defensively it feels like they can kind of be controlled through the pass game. There's been some interesting performances on and off from guys like Jaquan Sanks and Matthew McDoom, who, by the way, S-tier football name there, Matthew McDoom. But at the same time, there's not been enough consistency for me to get super excited about how they can defend anybody. They try this bend but don't break defensive scheme when it comes to how they cover people, and it's worked for the most part, except for Kansas. And there were some key offensive plays that the Bearcats were able to make to beat Kansas 2 weeks ago. But Jalen Daniels did whatever he wanted to do on the offensive side of things. So that is really where I'm concerned, is how does this defense step up? Because so far they've stepped up just a little bit enough that they don't get beat. And even against Nebraska, they were able to hold them, but there was not a point where I was just like, this defense is why they are going to beat Nebraska. It's always back on the offense. So is there ever going to be a chance for this defense to pick up the offense if they start to slow down a little bit? Right now, my answer is no.
As I mentioned, the second worst pass defense in the Big 12.
You can throw on them, for
sure.
sure.
You can throw on them here. Cincinnati giving up, I think, about 262 yards per game through the air. Now, contrasting that with UCF, you've got the third best pass defense in the league, allowing only 150 yards through the air. And that takes me to my last point about UCF here, is that you cannot give up the big plays on the road. You just can't. It was our key to the game versus Kansas, and Jalen Daniels found just enough of them in the second half to take down UCF, but they'd been doing a pretty good job kind of containing him. He's a very boomer bust kind of player. And you've got to take away something that they do well. Right. And I have one of my good friends, college football analyst, Jake Crane. He says this, he says, look, man, it's one thing to let for a team to come into your house and be good at the things they're good at, but it's another thing for you to let them be good at things they're bad at. And if you are UCF, you cannot let UC be good at pass defense versus you when they've been bad at pass defense all year long up to this point. So it's really hone in on the weaknesses here, man, and attack. You have the downfield threats. I mentioned Dwayne Thomas Jr. He's emerged as an absolute playmaker in the Big 12 so far this year. Scott Frost came into the season saying, I love my wide receiver room. He was effusive in his praise for them. And so coming into a game like this, where you're highlighting pass defense, and I'm saying, like, look, I think the head coach's favorite position group might be wide receivers. There should be an opportunity there, but somebody's got to throw them the ball, and that will be the question. Will it be Cam Fancher? Will it be Taven Jackson? We'll see about that. Again, last word to you, my friend, before we move on here and get to our second break. What other things are you looking for UC to avoid here?
The one other thing, and this is back kind of going on offense, they did a thing this last week where they kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit. They went out on Iowa State pretty heavily in the first half, and it was almost a perfect first half offensively for them. And then in the second half, it seemed like they started to get a little cute, and there were a couple of double reverse passes that were either incomplete or they went for like a couple of yards because Brendan Sorsby checked down on a trick play. Or then there was also, an option out to the right where he pitched it, and I believe it was Tawee Walker. It could be wrong, but it hit him in the hands and fell to the turf, and Iowa State fell on it. It was just a very strange play where it seemed as though for much of the day they were lining up and going straight at Iowa State, and they were controlling the game that way. So then they decided to get cute with it, and they started to let Iowa State back in. So what do they do with that moving forward? The second half offense needs to be a lot more like they were at Kansas and a lot less like they were against Iowa State. That's going to be a little bit of my concern. turnovers have not been an issue with UC as much, kind of like you mentioned with UCF. They've done a good job of taking care of the football, but definitely we saw last year that as the season went along, Brendan Sorsby started to wane in that a little bit. So hopefully that doesn't happen here as we get deeper into the season right now, because there's some folks that are starting to say some nice things about Brendan Sorsby. Is he going to be listening to the press, or is he just going to be keeping his nose to the grindstone? That's going to be the big key here.
Avoiding the rat poison headed into this one, man. And we are almost at the midway point for the season for most teams. And again, you're starting to understand where your goals are at. If you're both of these teams, technically, your whole season is still in front of you. If both these teams were to win out, which obviously one's got to win and one's got to lose on Saturday, but technically your whole season's still in front of you in terms of goals for the season here. Who's going to be one step closer to that goal on Saturday and who's going to be one step further away? We'll talk about that next.
There are few ways to really enjoy a college football game like you can with Prize Picks, because you can put together a bunch of different picks into one play and make money off of your decision. Because look, we all like to be right, but rarely when we're right, we get paid instantly. Prize Picks makes that happen. All you have to do is pick your favorite players and pick more or less on their projections. Like you can look at Tawee Walker this weekend with his rushing yards and pick more or less on that. Brendan Sorsby passing yards, of course, you want to pick more on that because he's just going to go crazy. You can also look at NFL stats as well. Joe Flacco going to be starting quarterback for the Bengals, I think, this Sunday. It's going to be fun. And Prize Picks is going to have all of it. So make sure you check out Prize Picks today. If you download the Prize Picks app and you use the code LOCKEDONCollege, you'll get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup over on Prize Picks. It's good to be right.
Prediction time. Doom, doom, doom. Now we've got to hold our feet to the fire here. We said a lot, my friend, in the first 25 minutes of this show. I'm going to take the heat off you here.
Okay.
The UCF's going to lose this football game. I expect to see a lot of fight. And I expect to see some interesting adjustments from Scott Frost. We'll see what happens at quarterback for UCF. As I mentioned, Cam Fancher won the job coming out of fall camp. He lost it to injury before the end of the second quarter in game one, and he got healthy and did not make his way back. Now, I think what I learned against Kansas is after Taven got hurt, that Taven is still the number one quarterback of this team. We'll see if Scott Frost and McKenzie Milton feel the same way coming up here. Now, as we're recording this, we don't have an availability report, a Big 12 availability report. I believe it comes out Wednesday nights at 10 p.m. But we'll talk about that later in the week here. I expect a hard-fought football game. In the first year of a rebuild, there are going to be more ups and downs, and there are going to be more frustrations, I think, than celebrations. Saturday may be another frustrating day for UCF, but it doesn't mean that I think that they'll lay down and take it, though, right? I think that they're going to put up a good fight. They've been putting up a good fight all year long. Right now, ESPN likes Cincy, the ESPN matchup predictor, giving Cincinnati a 69.8% chance to win. The over-under opened at 56.5, and the spread opened at 10.5. The spread still sits at 10.5. The Bearcats a 10.5 point favorite at home. I don't think Cincinnati covers. I think it's closer than that, but I do think they win, unfortunately.
I do agree with you on both accounts. I don't think that I feel like 10.5 is an overreaction to what's happened these first two Big 12 games. I think that UCF will keep it closer than that. The 50, it's funny because you mentioned 56.5. It's actually come down to 54.5 on the over-under, at least over our friends on FanDuel. And what intrigues me about that is that it's 2 weeks in a row now that UC has scored over 30. I think that the run game keeps it that way. I think they still get over 30 points in this one. I'm not sure of the final score, but I do think that UCF covers the 10.5, and I think they go over 54.5 on the game.
Ooh.
Let's say this. I think it's a similar score to last week. We're going to go 30. I think my math is going to work on this one. I'm going to go 34-27. UC gets the win.
Ooh, 34-27. Another game sweating it into the fourth quarter. That's essentially what we called against Kansas. I said, guys, I don't know what to tell you, but Kansas is going to have the lead in the fourth quarter, and we maybe get a final drive from UCF to win it. We almost got that. It was almost exactly that, right where we called it. So I like that score.
I'll tell you this. I got really surprised last week when UC had the ball and they had the ability to run the clock out a little bit, and it was the third down play. I'm like, what are they going to do here? They're just going to try to pass it and trying to run past the sticks. What are we going to do? They go deep and they throw like the longest play that I've seen in a long time. I think there were only 6 plays longer in school history when they go 82 yards to Caleb Goody and they score a touchdown to really ice the game. I was surprised to see that they were that aggressive on that play. So I still think there's going to be a chance for them to cover, but I think ultimately UCF will keep it close and they'll be able to find a way to kind of poke holes in their Bearcats pass defense. And Bearcats forced one turnover last weekend and got called back on a defensive pass interference that I think most people would say was the most egregious pass interference call they'd ever seen. But still, they just don't force turnovers in the secondary. So I kind of think that this game is going to be a back and forth a little bit. These two teams seem to play each other close ever since their days in the American. So I don't expect anything different here.
Yeah, I like this one 33-27. I think it's I don't like Cincinnati to cover. And I do agree with you on the overreaction maybe to the start of this Big 12 season for UCF. They're going to be tough. They're going to be hell on everybody from now until the end of the season. I'm telling you, because the defense is playing well enough to do that. They find that little bit more oomph offensively here. The Scott Frost, as McKenzie Mills, these guys have something in their bag that could get UCF over the top. While I'm calling for UC to win it, I would not be surprised if UCF pulled something out of their hat here. I think coaching is always good for a couple wins every single year. For a team that went 4-8 last year, but had talent that was better than 4-8, I think we see them pull out a couple of the ones that they had a chance to pull out last year, but didn't. Could it be this weekend versus Cincinnati? We'll see. I know I'll be on pins and needles, as will my good friend Jeff Carr from Locked On Bearcats. Jeff, I want to thank you for joining me today on the Locked On crossover. Before we get out of here, as always, tell people where they can find you.
You can always follow Locked On Bearcats everywhere you get your podcasts and watch us on YouTube. And you can find me on Twitter at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. I'm also on TikTok at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. And follow the show at LO_Bearcats.
Jeff, it's another big moment at Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation along 2-time Coach of the Year, AP Coach of the Year, Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts, a college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch Locked On College Football every Thursday throughout the season and only on Fire TV. Catch us here tomorrow on Locked On UCF and Locked On Bearcats. It's a Locked On crossover. Woo.